How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the channel for another PvE video. In this video I'm going to be using the Ruin's Greatsword and its Ash of War Ways of Destruction. This Ash of War deals a lot of physical damage and some magic damage, so I can't wait to see what kind of numbers I put out for damage in this video, and I hope you guys stick around to see the rest of the video and see how I do. Also, let me know what you guys think of the video in this setup. I did a lot more of the voicing over this time around. Let me know if you like that better or if you want to hear more genuine reaction from me actually playing the video game itself. I was really impressed with the Ruin's Greatsword and the amount of damage I was able to put out with the Ash of War itself, especially when I connected the physical part of the Ash of War. It gave me about an extra 1,000 points of damage, so I thought that was extremely useful, and I was able to tear through most of the early to mid game bosses without much of a fight. Looking at Margit, I was definitely able to take care of this without too much of a hassle. Aside from the damage output that the Ash of War does, it also gives you a good amount of hyper armor, meaning that you can tank a lot of the hits from the bosses in the game without being broken out of the Ash of War itself. If you have a good enough build, I don't see the issue with you just taking hits from the bosses and trading with them, just so long as you have enough damage negation for the boss that you're going against. But this weapon will definitely trade with almost all the bosses in the game. After dealing with Margit, I decided to go to the main gate of Stormveil because I'm built fucking different, and I was going to tell Godfrey that himself, but they must have told him already because by the time I got there, I could already smell the urine and fear leaking through his trousers, and it was well deserved. I didn't treat this fight very seriously. I did use this fight as a range test for the Ash of War, and I have to say I was pretty impressed with the range of the Ash of War. It covered a good distance in the boss fight itself, but since a lot of the fights coming up were going to be very close and personal, I didn't really get a chance to use that range all that much. I was also really impressed with the Charge R2 attack that is unique to the Ruin's Greatsword. It deals a little bit of a gravity aftershock after you charge it up and it hits the ground. It does a good amount of poise damage, and even though it doesn't do as much damage as the Ash of War, I think it's still very useful. After the fight with Godric, I went to go collect the Warrior Jar Shard from Alexander to try to pair it up with Alexander's Jar Shard, only to find out that they weren't compatible, and I feel like that's something I should have known already. But even without boosting the damage of the Ash of War at all, I was still able to take Renala down the fastest I've ever done it before, and that was 3 hits and less than 10 seconds. The second phase would have been a lot easier and a lot faster if I had paid attention to my FP flasks. I ran out of FP, giving her the opportunity to get away and summon a big giant that did cause me a little bit of trouble, but she still went down without much of a fight. After the Renala fight, I had to go back and accept Melina as our Finger Maiden because I forgot to do that. I was too busy riding Torrent off into the sunset trying to get this run out of the way that I kind of forgot to get her. That was kind of crucial. Making my way to the Rune-strewn Precipice, I was able to see one of the friends we haven't seen in a couple of playthroughs, and that's this Magma Worm over here. And I have to say, not once in this boss fight was I really concerned about the amount of damage I was taking, because the damage output that I was giving was far more substantial. Not only that, I managed to poise break this guy right towards the end of the boss fight, meaning that he didn't really stand much of a chance anyways, as I was doing this from long distance, and this boss is very, very slow moving boss. I fully expected the Altus Plateau to take my lunch money, but surprisingly, I was still bullying a lot of the enemies that were just standing in the way. I didn't have much trouble with damage output or with taking too much damage in, and I know that's because I'm a New Game Plus 2, but I was really surprised with how well this weapon carried out into the middle game. Golden Shower Godfrey was the first boss that actually gave me a little bit of a challenge because I was still trying to figure out the timing of his attacks, and while his attacks don't hurt, they happen in succession, so if I get hit by the first attack, there's a good chance I'll get hit by the second attack, but once I remembered that I had an absolute fuck ton of a nuclear weapon in my right hand, I ended the match. After that, I went ahead and grabbed the Bolts of Grandsax, and I went ahead and showed Margit, who was boss for the second time in this playthrough. The Fire Giant is one of my least favorite bosses in this game, and it was originally because I didn't know how to manipulate the camera while fighting him, so I stayed locked on the entire time. Aside from that, he's a tank, he has a lot of health, and he does a lot of damage. All of his hits are really big hits, but he didn't stand much of a chance for the Ruin's Greatsword. Even in his second phase, all I really had to do was just chop at his hands a few times, run in between his thighs, and spam like I was trying to end any genealogies he could be potentially having. It was really a shame for the Fire Giant. I broke his poise at least once and evaded his balls at the same time, but eventually he fell to the Ruin's Greatsword just like all the other bosses had before him. And I have to say, this fight felt really easy using the Ruin's Greatsword. The Ash of War is mind-bogglingly easy to use even in the late game. I use the same sleep strategy for the Godskin duo as I always have, but because I don't have Assassin's Gambit, it makes it a little bit more difficult because they do aggro onto me and they become a lot more mobile. But once I sleep them, it's basically game over. Unfortunately, I do have to inform you that this boss fight is where I received my first death this playthrough, which I thought was pretty good considering I can be pretty clumsy. And surprisingly, the death wasn't to Malak's first fight, because his first phase is where I have the most trouble. No, this time, it was the second phase that gave me the most trouble. I'm not sure what was in my water this time, but I managed to miss roll and catch every single hit that I normally dodge perfectly, but I was able to come back the second time around and give him a little bit more of a good show. There we go. Let's try to have him run towards us. Perfect. 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 Wow, that was absolutely great. Oh, and a stun for the last hit. Look at that. Wow. After redeeming myself, I got to bounce around Gideon using the Ash of War, and it was pretty fun just up until he had a little bit of health left. Then I felt bad and decided to give him a death on his feet. There we go. After getting to practice my timing on the yellow Godfrey, the real Godfrey wasn't too much more of a challenge. He had a little bit more of a health pool, of course, but other than that, nothing really bothered me about this first phase. The second phase also didn't do too much damage to me because I do have a lot more damage output than I usually do, and he has a lot less armor as he rips it all off. So this fight was pretty much wrapped up in the bag for me. It did take me 3 times to do that though, so I'll say that with clarity. I did not get this on my first try. Not this time. GG's. Rodor was the second to last boss that stood between me and the title of Elden Lord, but with as long as his recovery time after his attacks took, I had no problem finding spots for the Ash of War to fit in and fully charge our 2 attacks. He took his sweet time to recover from a bunch of attacks, and I took full advantage of that. I went into this fight without using any buffs, without warming up of any kind, just so that way after I beat him I could use those buffs to the fullest against the Elden Beast, who, in my opinion, is more of a challenging opponent, not because of the moves he has, but because of how big the arena is, and I don't have Torrent, so I have to run after him all the time. As always, we're going to get 1 on his soft belly. 1200 damage isn't bad. Run behind his leg. Ooh, I have a feeling I might get hit here. Nope, I'm doing fine. I almost forgot there was a 4th one for some reason. There we go. Man, I'm really trying to get this stun. This is gonna take a minute. Oh, that sucks. Not bad. I've been trying to work on my lock-on, lock-off attacks a little bit more, or the lock-off dodges. So, I mean, I've played the game enough to where I know most of the sound cues for the big bosses. So I really shouldn't be stressing too hard. There we go. Look at that. That was perfection. Wow. Alright everybody, that's going to be the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I sure did. This weapon was a lot of fun to use, and I was really surprised with the amount of damage I was able to put out with the Ash of War. The talismans that I used are right here. My stats are on screen, and my rune level is 162. That's what I ended up finishing off. I plan on upgrading as I continue on in this path to using all 9 of the legendary weapons. So who knows, maybe at the end of this I'll have a fully maxed out character to take into the DLC. Go ahead and leave a guess on which legendary weapon I'm going to be using next, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.